I still can't believe what happened, and honestly, I don't know if I was right or wrong. My daughter, my sweet, normally reserved 20-year-old daughter, took matters into her own hands after we caught my husband, her father, in bed with my sister. Can you even imagine that? The betrayal, the shock, the absolute gut-wrenching realization that your entire life is a lie, and then to see your child, who you've always protected, become the instrument of a truly shocking punishment. Tell me, honestly, if you were in my shoes, would you have allowed it? Would you have let your daughter essentially destroy her father's reputation in the way she did? Let me start from the beginning, because to understand the magnitude of what unfolded, you need to understand the life I thought I had. My husband, Mark, and I had been together for 25 years, married for 23. We met in college, young, idealistic, and completely head over heels. He was my rock, my best friend, the man I envisioned spending every single day of the rest of my life with. We built a beautiful home, a successful life, and most importantly, we raised our amazing daughter, Chloe. Chloe was always the light of our lives. She's smart, artistic, and incredibly empathetic, sometimes to a fault. She just turned 20 and was in her second year of university, studying graphic design. Our family unit felt unbreakable. We had our squabbles, of course, every family does, but nothing that ever made me doubt the foundation of our love or loyalty. Mark was a devoted father, always present at her school events, coaching her soccer team when she was little, helping her with projects, and just generally being the kind of dad every kid deserves. He was also, or so I thought, a loving and attentive husband. We still had our date nights, our inside jokes, and a comfortable intimacy that comes with decades of shared history. My sister Sarah is a few years younger than me. We were close growing up, as sisters often are, but as adults, our lives took different paths. She moved across the country for a while, pursued a career in marketing, and we mostly kept in touch through phone calls and holiday visits. About 6 months ago, Sarah went through a particularly brutal divorce. Her husband left her for a much younger woman, taking most of their shared assets and leaving her financially and emotionally devastated. Naturally, I offered her a place to stay. Our house is large, with a guest bedroom and bathroom, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world to open our home to my struggling sister. Mark was surprisingly enthusiastic about it. He said it was the least we could do for family, and I remember feeling a surge of pride in him, seeing his generous spirit. Sarah moved in, initially for what we thought would be a few weeks, just to get back on her feet. Those few weeks stretched into a month, then 2, then 3. She was having trouble finding a new job in our area, and her emotional recovery was slow. I didn't mind, not really. It was nice having her around, and Chloe, who had always been fond of her aunt, enjoyed her company too. They'd often sit together in the evenings, chatting and laughing while I was cooking dinner or doing household chores. Mark and Sarah also seemed to get along well. They'd discuss current events, their respective jobs, and sometimes Mark would even help her with her job applications, reviewing her resume and offering advice. I saw it as a good sign, a healthy dynamic of 2 adults in a household, supporting each other. I was so incredibly naive. Looking back now, the signs were there, subtle at first, then growing progressively bolder. Sarah started dressing more carefully around the house, even on days she wasn't leaving. Mark began coming home from work a little later, always with a plausible excuse, an important meeting, traffic, helping a colleague. They started spending more time alone, ostensibly watching a movie in the living room after I'd gone to bed, or discussing finances in Mark's home office with the door ajar. My gut would occasionally clench, a tiny, almost imperceptible whisper of unease, but I'd immediately dismiss it. Don't be ridiculous, I'd tell myself. This is your husband, your sister. They're family. You're just being paranoid. I truly believed it. I told myself it was just the stress of having an extra person in the house, the slight disruption to our routine. Chloe, however, was starting to notice things too, though she didn't vocalize them to me directly at first. She was home for the summer break from university, and her keen eye for detail and her innate sensitivity picked up on the shift in atmosphere. She'd observe them, quiet and thoughtful, her gaze lingering on their interactions a little too long. I remember one evening, I walked into the kitchen and found Sarah laughing a little too loudly at one of Mark's jokes, her hand resting on his arm a beat longer than necessary. Chloe was sitting at the breakfast bar, sketching in her notebook, and I saw her pause, her pencil hovering over the paper, her eyes narrowing almost imperceptibly as she watched them. I brushed it off, but later that night, Chloe asked me, "Mom, do you think Aunt Sarah is ever going to move out?" I told her I wasn't sure, that she was still trying to get on her feet. Chloe just nodded, a strange, knowing look in her eyes that I couldn't quite decipher at the time. The actual discovery was brutal, as discoveries of this nature always are. It was a Tuesday evening. I had been at a book club meeting and came home earlier than expected. The house was quiet when I walked in, which was unusual. Mark usually had the TV on, and Sarah often listened to music while working on her laptop. I called out, "I'm home!" No answer. I assumed they were both out. Or perhaps Sarah was in her room, and Mark was in his office. I walked past the living room, heading towards the kitchen to grab a glass of water. As I passed our bedroom door, I noticed it was slightly ajar. A faint sound, a muffled giggle, caught my attention. My heart started to pound, a slow, heavy drum in my chest. My breath hitched. It was a sound I recognized, Sarah's distinct laugh, but laced with an intimacy that sent a chill down my spine. And then I heard Mark's voice, low and murmuring. A cold dread washed over me, a horrifying premonition that made my stomach churn. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to turn away, to run, to pretend I hadn't heard anything. But I couldn't stop myself. My hand trembled as I pushed the door open just a few more inches. And there they were, in my bed. My husband and my sister, naked, entwined, their faces flushed, oblivious, caught in their disgusting act. My world imploded. The air left my lungs. I felt a scream building in my throat, but no sound came out. It was a silent, deafening explosion inside my head. I must have made some noise, a gasp, a choked sob, because their heads snapped up. The look on their faces, a mixture of shock, guilt, and a desperate, fleeting attempt to cover themselves, is seared into my memory. It was truly a scene from hell. I just stood there, paralyzed, unable to move, unable to speak, tears streaming down my face. Then, from behind me, I heard another gasp, a sharper, more anguished sound than my own. I turned slowly, as if in a dream, and saw Chloe standing in the hallway, her school bag still slung over her shoulder. She had just come home. Her eyes were wide, fixed on the scene in the bedroom, her face drained of all color. The raw agony in her expression was almost more painful than my own betrayal. She looked at her father, then at her aunt, then back at me, her mother, broken and crumbling. That's when my voice finally returned, a guttural, choked sound. "Get out!" I shrieked at Mark and Sarah. "Get out of my house! Both of you, now!" The next few hours were a blur of screaming, crying, accusations, and denials that quickly turned into pathetic admissions. Mark tried to apologize, to explain, to beg. Sarah just wept, clutching at her clothes, muttering about how sorry she was, how it was a mistake, how she was so vulnerable. I didn't care. I didn't want to hear it. All I could feel was a bottomless well of pain and disgust. Chloe, after the initial shock, had retreated to her room, slamming the door. I could hear her sobbing through the walls, and it ripped me apart even more. My beautiful daughter, witnessing this absolute degradation of her family. By the end of the night, Mark had packed a bag and left, driven out by my furious rage. Sarah, still pleading, still crying, eventually slunk out as well, her shame palpable. The house felt hollow, tainted, utterly silent except for my own ragged breathing and Chloe's muffled cries. The next morning, Chloe came out of her room, her eyes red and puffy, her face set in a grim, determined line I had never seen before. She didn't speak much, just looked at me with an intensity that told me something had fundamentally shifted within her. She was usually so gentle, so artistic, so focused on beauty and creation. But now, there was a cold fire in her eyes, a reflection of the deep hurt and anger she felt. Over the next few days, Mark tried to call, to text, to come back, but I refused to speak to him. Sarah also sent me a long, rambling email filled with apologies and excuses. I blocked them both. I told Chloe that Mark was staying somewhere else for a while, keeping the full extent of the truth from her, thinking I could shield her further. But she already knew. She had seen it all. She saw the pain in my eyes, the way I flinched every time the doorbell rang. She saw the devastation. It was then that Chloe told me she had a plan. "A plan for what?" I asked, my voice weak and trembling. "A plan for them," she said, her voice eerily calm. She said they deserved to be exposed, to feel even a fraction of the humiliation and pain they had inflicted. Community groups, even university alumni networks that both Mark and Sarah were a part of. She also knew that Mark and Sarah both had a lot of mutual friends, colleagues, and acquaintances. She carefully compiled a list of everyone they knew in common. Then she used her anonymous accounts to send these announcements directly to them, framing it as an important community alert. She also contacted a few local gossip blogs and community news outlets, anonymously, of course, framing the story as a shocking local scandal involving prominent members of the community. The sheer audacity of it, the meticulous planning, it was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. The first wave hit on a Monday morning. The responses were almost immediate. My phone started ringing off the hook. Friends, family, even distant acquaintances, all wanting to know if it was true. Mark's phone, I later found out, practically melted. His professional reputation, which he had meticulously built over decades, began to crumble within hours. His company, a well-known financial firm, received countless calls and emails. The elegant, damning posters started appearing everywhere online. Screenshots were shared, reposted, and discussed with a feverish intensity. People Chloe didn't even know started circulating the story, adding their own outraged comments. The local gossip blogs picked it up, and suddenly, the shocking local scandal was front-page news in the online community. The comments section of every post was a firestorm. People were appalled, disgusted, and overwhelmingly on my side, and by extension, Chloe's. They condemned Mark and Sarah in the harshest possible terms. There were calls for Mark to be fired, for Sarah to be ostracized. The shame and public humiliation were instantaneous and absolute. Mark was suspended from his job within 24 hours. The official reason was conduct unbecoming of a company executive, but everyone knew why. His career, his standing in the community, his entire public persona was utterly destroyed. He tried to call me, begging me to make Chloe take it down, to issue a statement, to deny it all. I just listened, cold and detached, and then hung up. Sarah's situation was equally dire. Her attempts to find a new job instantly evaporated. Every interviewer, every networking contact knew. She became a pariah. Her few remaining friends distanced themselves. Her emotional state, already fragile from her divorce, plummeted. She even tried to contact Chloe, leaving tearful voicemails, but Chloe ignored them all. Chloe, through it all, remained calm, almost serene. She watched the chaos unfold, a quiet satisfaction in her eyes. It was a terrifying transformation from the gentle artist I knew to this fierce, vengeful force. She saw it as justice, as righting a wrong. And in a way, she was right. They had wronged us, deeply and unforgivably. The aftermath for me was complicated. On one hand, there was a strange, grim satisfaction. They had suffered. They were paying a heavy price for their betrayal. On the other hand, my life was still in ruins. My marriage was over, my family irrevocably broken. I had lost my husband and my sister in one fell swoop. The public attention, while validating in some ways, was also incredibly invasive. I became the cheated-on wife in the community, and while people were kind and supportive, it was still a label I hadn't asked for. Chloe eventually took down the posts after about a week, once the message had well and truly spread. The damage was done irreparable. She had made her point. It's been several months now. Mark is still unemployed, his reputation in tatters. I hear he's living with his parents in another state, trying to rebuild his life, but it's a difficult road for him. Sarah eventually moved even further away, completely severing ties with me and the rest of our family. Chloe is back at university, seemingly back to her normal self, but I know she's not the same. She carries a different kind of strength now, a steeliness that wasn't there before. She doesn't regret what she did, not for a second. And me, I'm still trying to heal. I've started divorce proceedings, and I'm slowly, painfully, figuring out what my new life looks like. It's hard every single day, but I'm doing it, for myself and for Chloe. This whole mess has taught me a lot about betrayal, resilience, and the unexpected strength of a child protecting her mother. It's a story of heartbreak, but also of a strange kind of justice. I still grapple with whether Chloe's actions were right or wrong, but I know this. They changed everything. If you were on my side and Chloe's, please like this video. Subscribe for more stories like this, and share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I'll see you all in the next story.